Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So Mythvision has finally released his Neoniskos video, or the Naked Young Man video, with a biblical scholar, not a classicist, Dennis Ronald Macdonald, that I've done a previous video on before with the Christ thing and all that. But with this video, I've already made a video on this when he released it, and I showed that, hey, this guy keeps everything behind a membership paywall and all he's doing is trying to make money. And I'll just show you quick recaps of that through this video. But there was a couple of things in it I wanted to address because he says some outright lies that I showed evidence that he's lying. So let's get into it and see what happens. And I'll link the other video here. So the first few clips are from his previous video where, just look at him, he's not a classicist and he doesn't know the sources. This is what he says.
Now, I don't have my Greek lexicon in front of me, and so I haven't done the work myself.
You, however, went to Harvard and learned both classics as well as Bible, correct?
Yeah.
Well, actually, here's what he's trained in. His academic work is biblical studies, New Testament studies from the Claremont School of Theology. He's a biblical scholar. He's not a classicist. So he might say he's been doing Greek for 60 years, but it's just biblical Greek. It's not all of classics, even though he says he wants to compare Homer and the New Testament, which is what he tries to do here.
It's not in the major literature that the Greeks would have been exposed to.
So right there, when he says it's not in the major literature that the Greeks would have been exposed to, he's talking about Euripides, Hippolytus. Like, he doesn't even know Euripides, one of the most famous playwrights in history. So this is the point we're starting off from this guy, okay? Now let's get into this video.
You know your thing about Greek. You went to Harvard about this stuff. Like, you've spent, how long have you known Greek here?
Well, 60 years ago.
Okay, so you know a thing or two about Greek.
So I haven't done the work myself. It's not in the major literature that the Greeks would have been exposed to.
Ammon Hillman is the guy. Pushed this view called the satanic interpretation, the satanic version of Mark's passage here.
Satanic version of Mark's interpretation. I have never heard anyone call what Ammon Hillman translates and what we can all translate for ourselves as the satanic version of Mark's gospel. Never heard that.
Here, I'm not going to be able to, for sake of YouTube and monetization and things like that.
You hear that? You hear that? I'm not going to be able to, he was talking about, I'm not going to be able to describe in detail some of these things that we're talking about with Jesus and the naked boy, because he doesn't want to lose his precious monetization and all the money that's coming in from this video for this fucking. So he just spoke about not being able to monetize this video if he talks about too many details. And then here's a clip from my last video of what he actually does in his descriptions and how he makes all this money on the side. Look at these MVP courses. Sign up for courses. Sign up for courses. Give me money, give me money, give me money. I may earn a small commission. So he makes money off putting all these links in his description. That's all it's about.
Well, no, it's not my imagination. I could show you other ancient examples from the Greek world where there are things like this. And I think most of the people I've talked to say, yeah, there are. I wanted to talk about what is going on in Mark 14.
Mark is responsible for this naked young man at the garden. He's also responsible for the clothed young man at Jesus' tomb.
At least he references, unlike Bart Ehrman, another biblical scholar, fucking hell, he said the tomb was empty when Jesus rose or was risen. He said there was no one there, his tomb was empty. But at least this guy said there was another Neoniskos at the tomb in Mark 16.
In both cases, the fellow is called a Neoniskos. A Neoniskos is not a child. A Neoniskos is a warrior fit young man.
A warrior fit young man. Now you'll see where he's going to pull that from, but here we go. I actually have Neoniskos from the New Testament lexicon right here, which I've shown many times before. You can have a look. Just a quick recap. Look, what does it say? Because we're talking about Mark 14:51 right here. And it says right down the bottom, used of a young attendant or servant, or what we would call a slave. The female version of that is called a paidiske. And that says feminine or paidiskos, a young boy or slave. See Neoniskos. So we're talking about young children here, underage in terms of puberty, as a female slave and a young boy slave, or a servant, what they want to call it, attendant or servant, okay? That's what we're talking about. That's what the Bible says in Mark 14:51, okay? Young boy slave. That's who Jesus is with. And now just take a quick look at this clip from my last video, because I broke it down pretty well there. A Neoniskos is equal to a napios. So what is a napios? A napios in the lexicon of the New Testament is an infant or little child, or a minor not of age. And in the LSJ, it says infant child, from a child from infancy, and of children up to puberty here in the red. So that's the age range we're talking about. from infancy to puberty, not a fit young man. It's a child. And now this is what the fit young man or the child was doing with Jesus. He was following along closely or accompanying him. So following with the mind to attend, as we saw before, it says attendant or servant. See, young attendant or servant, or what we call a slave. That's what the little boy was doing with Jesus.
The word for the garment that he's abandoning, and he's nude after that, is a sindon.
Now what's a sindon? I've shown before. Sindon, fine cloth, usually linen, and it's used for mummies, which, think of ancient Egypt, those kind of wrappings that they put on mummies, and it can be anything made of such cloth, garment of linen. And it can also be surgeon's bandages. Bousones telemones, right in the middle, bousones. Now that gets into the purple. I didn't go into it before, but I'm going to go into it now, because bousonos is a fine linen bandage used for mummy cloths and for wounds, okay? Now, what is number 2 down here? Porphyros. That's Hesychius. We love Hesychius. He is a great ancient lexicographer who equates all these different ancient Greek terms and words. Now, he says porphyros. What's that? So as you can see here, it says porphyrios. Rolling sea. Number 2, hyma, of the body fluids and blood. We've got of stuff, cloths, which we're talking about cloths. And then we have after Homer, a distinct color, dark red, purple, or crimson. So if you know anything about the Tyrian purple, there was a huge trade for the purple back in antiquity, especially Rome, and of the Romans in the times we're talking about as well. They were using purple. It's even in the Bible. Jesus was clothed in purple during the Passion. So we're talking about purple, porphyra, purple, right down here. That's what Hesychius is saying. Bousonos is related to the purple bandage, or purple on the bandage. And where is the bandage? We'll have a look at on this child.
The young man at the tomb no longer is wearing a sindon, and he's no longer naked. He's peribiblamenos.
Sorry, the way he said peribiblamenos is hilarious. Sorry. He's been doing it for 60 years. Okay. Now, the problem with that here, it says the same word in 2 different cases, though in Mark 16 and Mark 14. He said, now he's peribiblamenos, which it says peribiblamenon, stolen leokain. So he's in a white robe, clothed in a white robe. But Mark 14, 51 and 52 says he's peribiblamenos, which is with the sindona upon his nakedness, epigumno. Okay, so that sindona, that purple bandage, is on his nakedness, okay? You know what that means. And then he katalipon ten sindona gumnos efugin. He dropped the bandage, fled naked. That's what that says. Right here, Mark 14:51. Both Mark 16 and Mark 14 says peribiblamenon. So right here, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't think he knows what he's talking about either, because it says the same word in both different passages. Now, what does peribiblamenon come from? It comes from peribalo, to throw round, about, or over, put on or over. So it's just saying you've put the bandage over your nakedness. Okay, that's all it's saying. You've covered your body, or you covered your nakedness. So that's what it says. Stolen leokain. You've covered your body. A stolen, a white robe. That's what that says. So that was Mark 16, or in Mark 14:51, it says, put on or over his nakedness a sindon.
He has a new garment put on. It's a white robe in Mark 16.
So he's saying the neoniskos is the same person from Mark 14 and Mark 16. So in the garden and in the tomb, he's saying it's the same neoniskos. We know why, because Jesus won the cross, and then he didn't get the antidote he needed. And then the neoniskos has that galeni, which Jesus needs to come back out of the rite, to come out of the death state. And now how does he give that to him? Well, these involve sexual rites or sexual acts with rites, which I've shown before with all these cults. So how do you administer the antidote, the antichrist? Well, you have to administer it rectally. And this is a child.
So apart from the morally abhorrent, right?
Because I want to avoid that.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, I want to avoid the moral argument to this, because if we go into the morality of Jesus being with a naked boy when he's arrested, there goes your whole religion, okay? Unless people sit there and go, oh yeah, I'll accept that. If anyone accepts that, then you deserve to be on the hill on that cross with Jesus and the other 2 lacei he was with. Because right here, what does he say in Mark 14:48? Hos epilestein. Why'd you come out with all these big heavy weapons, metamakaron, kaiksulon, sulaben me, to arrest me? Why'd you come out with all these heavy weapons like I'm a leistes, huh? We've shown this so many times. What is a leistes? Just a quick recap for you guys. So Hesychius, again, equates kentauroi, which is a leistai, kentauroi, centaur, and then kakurgoi as well, who in different versions of the gospel, it'll say Jesus is crucified with 2 leistai or 2 kakurgoi. So we get into Hesychius and he says Kentauroi equals leistai, and of Ainianes, and of paiderastai. Now we saw that before. What's paiderastai? And go to Kentauros paiderastes, from the brutal sensuality ascribed to the centaurs from Hesychius, which, well, look at the bottom, pretender as well, okay? That's interesting. But paiderastes is a lover of boys, mostly in a bad sense. Thank you to the Victorians for that. Bad sense, mostly. Okay? We know what we're talking about here. Jesus is saying, I'm not a leistes, I'm not a this. Okay? That's why he's saying that when he's with a naked boy. That's the context we have. If he was with a 30-year-old dude like this guy says, why would he be saying, I'm not this?
They made a criticism of the last interview I did with Richard Carrier because Richard didn't get into the Greek.
Yeah, but also Richard Carrier called everyone a bunch of... And it's like, okay, you want to just claim that someone is without any evidence just because we're bringing up ancient sources talking about Jesus being one of these people, okay? See how they throw it back on you? Yeah, it's not just that Carrier didn't bring up Greek. You guys don't bring up any fucking Greek in this either. Dude has been doing Greek for 60 years. Not one fucking source did you bring up in this video or the last one I did on you guys with Christing. Not one source. So shut the fuck up.
And they go, if you're not dealing with Greek on the spot, you don't know what you're talking about. Ammon knows the Greek. And it's so funny, Ammon will pull up the Greek in front of them, like in his streams, and doesn't show them the English. He tells them what it says. Like a good cult leader tells you the meaning of things without actually spelling it out and showing you and giving you the exact meaning of a lot of things. He kind of leaves you in the dark and says, oh, trust me, bro, I've got all this experience.
Honestly, the dumbest fucking thing to say, because honestly, just watch this. Just watch this.
In the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. Magian is one of the Median tribe. That is the group of Aryans. That's what they were originally. Then later, the Persians their priesthood adopts these Median customs. Enchanter. What is an enchanter? Somebody who affects your mind. What do you do when you pro-Lego something? You foretell. And they're going to say the word means to predict, and it's used of oracles and physicians. Here's the emplastron that you're going to be applying. I want you to see the medical bridge here, people. This is what the Magus uses.
He kind of leaves you in the dark and says, oh, trust me, bro, I've got all this experience.
You stupid fuck. Like, what? Have you never watched an episode? Obviously not, because right there, we just saw. He goes through the original text, Matthew 2:1. Here's the Greek. Did he show us what it says in English? Oh, I think he did. He brought up the lexicon and showed exactly every single definition right here of what a magus is, okay? A magus. These are the fucking three wise men, yeah? The three magus, the ones who enchant you in a bad sense. A wizard, okay? A charlatan. This is insane. It says it even from Matthew, the book of Matthew, which is what we're looking at. 2:1 right here. And they are one of the priests and wise men from Persia who interpreted dreams. And they're magical. Okay? Magus. Magic.
What is an enchanter? Somebody who affects your mind.
How? They are talking about foretelling with predictions and using oracles. These are the... Come on, man. And then it's of a physician. What's Jesus' name? Ea. He's a physician healer. Now you know why the three wise men, the three magus, magoi, were going to Jesus, giving him drugs, and gold. In so many of these episodes too on Lady Babylon, like you can see, he brings up all these definitions from the lexicon. So I'm sick of Mythvision sitting there fucking lying about this. Kustos.
In the dark and says, oh, trust me, bro, I've got all this experience. Trust me, bro, you've got over 60 years of experience, and I think we should listen to what you have to say here. They don't really care about the moral in this sense.
Yeah, but who's the one bringing up text? Who's the one bringing up evidence? Who's the one bringing up the lexicon? Huh? Yeah, we just saw it. It's Ammon. When did you guys bring up a source in any of your videos you've done? Fucking zero. In
the sense that they don't mind talking about it. They're not grossed out discussing it. They do think it's gross, most of them, if I'm going to still man it, now that I've heard some criticisms.
Those criticisms were on his last video with Carrier and saying this is a waste of time. You can go through the comments yourself on that one with Carrier. It's like, this is a waste of time. None of you brought up sources. This is ridiculous. So now he's going to go on to the relationship with Homer and the New Testament and the story of Elpenor, which, okay, let's get into.
There's a young man named Elpenor, who was one of Odysseus's crew. He's not called a Neoniskos.
Okay, stop right there. He is not called a Neoniskos in the Odyssey, okay? He's not called the Neoniskos. But let's see what he is called.
He's called the equivalent in Homeric Greek, Anenias.
Look at the... Oh, wow. Look how he did it. He even wanted to do the Indian head bob. What a fucking prick. Look at this wanker. And he even got it wrong. He said Aeneas. It's Aeneas, I think the word he was looking for, okay? What a...
He's called the equivalent in Homeric Greek, Aeneas.
Now, this is saying of men between 24 and 40. Aeneas, that's what I think the word he was looking for. So, he's not a Neoniskos. So, you're equating two separate things here. But let's take a look at what the actual word is. What is he actually called? Neotatos. That's what he is. Now, what does Neotatos mean? Okay, because it's not Neoniskos or Neonias. Neotatos is the youngest, and then that can come from Neos, which can be young, youthful, and it also can be of children, youths, and of men at least 30 years of age. This is Neotatos. And what does that mean? It means the youngest. So that means Elpenor was the youngest out of Odysseus's men. So if you have a troop of men, like Odysseus's men, and you're in the age of up to 30, and the youngest is 30 years of age, he can be the Neotatos, and he can be 30 years of age. That's what this is saying. But you're still going to be the youngest, even if you're 30 or if you're 12. Okay? It's just about the youngest between this group of people. And that's what he was. He was the youngest of the group from Odysseus's men. Let's see how he's going to explain this shit.
He's a young man. Mm-hmm. He gets drunk at Circe's palace.
What do you mean by drunk? It actually means Circe is the polypharmacal. Okay? She's of many drugs. And what did she do? She drugged all their drinks, and then they went to sleep. And then what did she do? She tried to drug Odysseus as well. And what happened there? See? Polypharmakos, knowing many drugs or charms, given to use of drugs, okay? Abounding in healing or poisonous herbs, and compounded of many drugs. So the polypharmakos is knowing many drugs. That's Circe right here in the Odyssey, okay? She knew all the drugs. So you're trying to equate Jesus not taking drugs with a story about someone giving someone drugs. And look at that, Ietroi. See, Io from healing, like Jesus' name, Iesus. And this is what Circe did. She prepared me a potion in a golden cup that I might drink, and put therein a drug with evil purpose in her heart. And then what happened? Put up thy sword in its sheath, and let us two go up to my bed. She tried to have sex with him after she gave him drugs, but he had counter drugs that he'd already taken, his antidote. He'd already taken an antidote, so Circe's drugs weren't going to do anything. And she was like, oh, what the fuck? This story is about drug use, okay? And they're trying to compare it, saying Jesus wasn't doing drugs, with using a story about using drugs. And here it is in the Greek. In a golden cup, she gave him the drugs. Pharmakon.
Before Odysseus and his men have to go to Hades, Odysseus calls his men at dawn and says, we need to be going to Hades. And Elpenor forgets that he's been sleeping on Circe's roof to work off his drunk, and he falls and breaks his neck, and his soul flees to Hades.
That's how they're equating the Neoniskos fleeing Jesus. Holy fuck. With Elpenor falling off a roof and breaking his neck. By his soul fleeing to Hades from his body. This is awful.
Gotcha.
He dies because he was drunk and died.
He dies because he was drunk and died.
The Neoniskos who runs away is a virile man like you.
Let's just make shit up. It's hilarious. The Neoniskos was a virile man. You said that he was not called Neoniskos in the Odyssey. And you said he was a Neonias, and it doesn't even say that. It just said he was the youngest of the group. The Neoniskos is not 30. It's used of a young attendant or servant, what we call a slave. Okay? That's what the Neoniskos is in this case with Mark 14:51. It says it right there. Mark 14:51, down the bottom right.
The Neoniskos who runs away is a virile man like you, capable of warfare and so on. And that's what's going on. And it's quite clear. He's not called a Neoniskos.
It's quite clear what? That you're making shit up? 60 years of ancient Greek as a biblical scholar, and this is what you pull out? Oh my God. I showed you. Youngest means the youngest. Neotatos, that's what he was called, okay? This is from the previous video about Christing, and his words working against him work perfectly here.
It's a cause looking for evidence and then messing up the evidence.
So now Mythvision is going to talk about Jesus in the park, or Gethsemane in the garden with the naked boy. And let's take a look. We'll take a little bit of a read of what it says and how Jesus is actually exhibiting traits of someone who is undergoing some psychological mental anguish, is what the term says, what the definition says. And here's what it says right here in English, Mark 14, 34. So my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even until death. Stay here and watch. He went forward a little and then fell on the ground. Bro, what are you doing falling over? Now in the Greek, it says, he ektham beisthai and ademonein. Now we looked at that before, but just have a quick look again. Ektham beo is to be amazed or amazed, astonished. So he's in some amazement and astonished state. How is a normal person in their right mind just in an amazement and astonishment just by walking in a garden? What's hademoneo? To be sorely troubled or dismayed, be in anguish. Okay, he's in anguish and astonishment, amazement. Anguish and amazement. This sounds like a drug trip, doesn't it? Because what's anguish? Severe mental or physical pain or suffering. What is causing Jesus to be in such severe mental or physical pain or suffering and in some kind of amazed state where he's falling over? This sounds like a drug trip if you've ever had one. And what kind of drugs was Jesus talking about? Jesus is talking about taking a thanasimon, which is a deadly, fatal drug, a poison. See, in Mark 16:18, he talks about it as being a poison, a deadly drug, because Josephus says the same thing. Now, this is Mark 16:18. Thanasimon, right here in the middle. You will drink the thanasimon and you will not be harmed. And what does it say? Josephus, they want us to talk about Josephus a bit later, but here's what Josephus says in the 1st century AD. When did Jesus live and die? 1st century AD. Okay. Sukain, my soul, and then the pharmakon mete thanasimon. So he's talking about death-inducing drugs, just like Jesus said. All right? So Josephus, your favorite Jewish source about antiquities of the Jews, they're doing death-inducing drugs. Okay? Thank you.
What does Mark mean? Here, they're in the garden. The disciples fall asleep, right? They can't even stay up. Then the soldiers come in with swords, like he's a bandit. Like this guy might be militant.
Oh, bandit. You say that? Bandit. Okay, we've seen all this shit before. What does it say? Down here. Hosep Leistein. You're coming at me like I'm a Leistein, all right? And what did we look? We already looked. Means Kentauroi Padarastai. That's how it equates, all right? That's why there's a Roman SWAT team after him, all right? Not just the dude who's a bandit. Hanging out with 3 kids and 1 young adult, maybe 20.
Hinting at this stuff that we've been kind of queuing in on as well with like Josephus and stuff. There is this notion that these guys might be violent.
So what are they talking about with Josephus? So what happened was Bart Ehrman, in a previous video I've done, he said Jesus was being arrested for being an insurrectionist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Insurrectionist is the bottom word here, Astasiastes. And even Josephus quotes Astasiastes is an insurrectionist, not the words we're talking about here, perate, kakugoi, leistai. That's not what we're talking about. These are 2 different definitions. And the favorite guy they love to pull up, Josephus, even said this is not a seditionist or an insurrectionist.
He's like, why are you coming with swords? I'm not violent. Like, hey, I'll go with you. What's up? The guy flees. They grab his tunic, whatever, he runs and flees, right? Why is he fleeing in the symbolism of Mark in your view?
Early Christians are more likely to see in the Elpenor character a male, a baptismal initiate.
See that? More likely. Look how he's trying to explain this. More likely. He doesn't know. He's making stuff up. Oh, early Christians are more likely to see this guy as a baptismal initiate. But why would early Christians want to relate to the Homeric story? I thought everything was Aramaic and Hebrew, right? Isn't that what we're being told? Everything's in Aramaic. Jesus spoke Aramaic. What were the New Testament writers basing their books on? What were they quoting? And it says right here, they were quoting the Septuagint. The Septuagint was the primary version of the Old Testament used by the early Christian church, including the New Testament authors, when quoting scripture. Okay, that's why we're talking about Greek. We're talking about a Hellenized world, talking Greek, speaking Greek, writing Greek, all right? But his assertion here that they're equating Elpenor with Mark and the Neoniskos is, fuck, that's a bit of a stretch, man.
And I don't want to leave people with the impression that there weren't ancient concoctions of psychedelics or
there were.
There's tons of stuff like that.
Yeah.
The thing is just because you can't use a heuristic approach to just, we see it over here. This cult did it, and this is also a cult. Therefore, association fallacy.
Just because this cult did it and used drugs doesn't mean that Jesus was using drugs in his cult. Like I just showed you, he was talking about death-inducing drugs, and he was walking around stumbling in a garden, falling over in an amazed, astonished state, in fear and anguish. Sounds like classic cases of having a drug trip. And the boy was there to help get him back out. That's what he was there for. with a sindon wrapped around his nakedness.
Yes, wine can be inebriated, especially for additional elements that are added to it, and
Right.
it often was the case.
Yeah, it was the case. Even in the Odyssey, which we're talking about right here, Pharmacon, she put drugs into the wine. She drugged Odysseus and his men. We're talking about drugs. You can't get away from drugs in the Odyssey. It's everywhere. You can't get away from drugs in the Bible. You can't get away from drugs in the Odyssey. So this is what they were talking about. This is what the Odyssey is. Taking drugs. Being captured by a witch. So Mythvision and Ronald Macdonald, again, I've just shown you, this is what the texts say. Did they bring up any text sources? No, not one fucking thing. Did Mythvision just say that Ammon never brings up sources and just tells people, he just reads out the Greek and he's a cult leader and doesn't say anything about what the English says? Well, actually, I just fucking showed you, didn't I? Brings up all the sources, all the text, and tells you exactly what is in it. Mythvision, big fat L for a fucking liar, alright? Fuck you. Honestly, Ronald Macdonald, 60 years of Greek, and this is what you come up with. Zero sources, zero evidence, and just speculation. Oh, where have we heard that before? Fucking speculation. Get the fuck out of here. I'm done.